All right, we're joined by director, choreographer, and community arts educator Kevin Levi Green, a native of Bolivia, North Carolina, also my hometown, and also a very dear friend of mine. He is also the founder of the dance and theater company Techmoja, and I'm so happy that you have joined us here with Block Chronicles today, and I want to welcome you in. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Absolutely, absolutely. So I just want to start off with a question. I know you, Kevin, and I just ran through some accolades right there that describes who you are. But who is Kevin Levi Green?
Well, I've recently been referred to as a multi-hyphenate. I'm a director, I'm a choreographer, I'm a musician, I'm a performer, cultural innovator, educator, community organizer, and I would say in some ways a leader. You know, we both come from Bolivia, and so having grown up in Bolivia, North Carolina, I had to come to a realization that it was only a small part of a great big world. And I discovered, I think it was in my teens, maybe when I was in middle school, that there was so much more in the world, so much more out there for me to do. And I was always performing and writing plays and inviting people in the community to come and be a part of those plays through my famous popcorn parties. And I realized that this was something that I could do. You know, growing up in Bolivia, you don't know that. Like you're not made aware of that, or maybe at that time, there were no examples of that.
Right. No, I could totally understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, especially for people who look like us. So like, you know, I didn't know that was a possibility. You know, I thought that only happened to people who lived in big cities. And so I would say Kevin Levi Green is a fighter and a seeker, a researcher. Yeah.
I love it.
That's in a nutshell.
I love it. No, that's great. And so we'll kind of pick up with what you were talking about, kind of with those popcorn parties and everything you're talking about. I'm sure that paved the way and started you to your dance and theater company. Can you just tell us a little bit about Techmoja?
Let's see. Techmoja was founded in 2009 with my mother, Donna Joyner Green, who was an arts administrator here. My mother and I noticed that there were no Black-led arts organizations in the area. And we saw that there was a need for there to be something that Black people could have ownership of. You know, something that was ours, something that felt safe, some place that felt comfortable. And so seeing the need for that, we created Techmoja. And a lot of people go, well, how did you end up with that name? The name actually came from my father, Levi Green, who also passed away in 2008. When I was in college, I attended the North Carolina School of the Arts for dance. When I was in college, he asked us, we were asked to do a performance, a small performance. And so I had to create a small group. I pulled some friends together and I was like, but we need a name. I don't know what we're going to call ourselves. And I knew I didn't want to call us Kevin Levi Green and Company or dancers, because I feel like the work was so much more than just me, you know, and I was like, there's so much more. And so he said, why don't you call it Techmoja? And we're like, what? And he goes, it's your 3 favorite forms of dance: technique, modern, and jazz. When he passed, which was before we actually incorporated, I decided I was going to stick with that name because it was so unique.
And with that story reminds me just of my next question, of just the importance of home. So when you think about home, what does that mean to you, and how does it connect with the work that you do?
I don't want to say this in a negative way, but I feel like in Bolivia, sometimes we're shut out from what is happening in the world. You know, we're all in our bubble, you know, so it's a farming community, fishers, you know, all of that. Fishermen. But I feel like my home needed the work in order to be made aware of what was happening, and how we're affected. But when I also think of home, I think of dealing with racial equity. So that led me to this path of dealing with social justice issues, and pushing those narratives and making sure that they're given an authentic voice from someone who is a part of the Black community.
You know, that's a perfect segue into what I want to get into now. And just to talk about just right now where we are in the country, as you know, we're just in a very fragile state. And racism is something that's a centerpiece of just everything that we're dealing with. You know, we just had the attack on the Capitol just recently, just everything with the Trump administration, and even before that administration, but just what was elevated during it. And that's just one of the two major centerpieces that are in our community right now in our country. And I want to focus on that one first. And so how important is that community engagement aspect to your dance company?
Community engagement is actually a key component of who Techmoja is. You know, we have a deep commitment to evaluation and collaboration and process, which are the core elements of our engagement strategy. You know, studio residencies, public showings, participatory workshops, and programs for artists and families, youth, and the LGBT community. We're trying to make sure that we use the cultural residencies as a bridge between the work and the community. Mm-hmm. We curate each residency to meet the goals of the participants and to maximize the impact of the performance. And so essentially what we're doing is we're meeting people where they are. So what are the needs of the community? We're listening to them, you know, we're listening to them to guide us in what we need to do. We're more facilitating the conversation. And that's just in different ways, different artistic ways.
Oh, that's awesome. If you had to pick one piece right now that kind of, you know, summarizes or captures the moment that we're in right now, like what would that piece be, and what's the story that it tells?
Well, that's very interesting that you said that. Most of my work takes on social justice issues, and, you know, they're strongly reflective of our current social climate. So picking one that is relevant is difficult because they all touch on one piece of our present.
Gotcha.
But if I had to pick one of the most recent pieces, I did a lot of research after attending a virtual exhibit called Carne Arena, which was created by Alejandro Inarritu, famous filmmaker. And I did that in DC actually about 2 years ago. And it takes you on a journey from Mexico into the United States.
Okay.
And so I actually took the time to engage with Yolanda House, who is Latina, and she took me to the community, and I got to meet people, and I got to do a lot of research and ask people about their experiences with crossing the border. And so from there, I created a piece called Sin Papeles, and the translation is without papers. And I would say it was the most relevant in this moment because I just read that our new president just signed did an executive order to reverse all the things that Trump was doing at the border. And Trump is actually very much present in this piece. A lot of his sound bites are present with the piece Sin Papeles about crossing the border, the wall.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. And yes, good news on that stuff is reverse. Hey, now the other centerpiece, the other crisis we're facing obviously is COVID-19. That's just really decimated our country and our communities in particular. And I know it's hit the arts community as well. And I just want to ask you just what has been that impact of COVID-19 with you specifically, or what challenges has Techmoja faced as a result?
Well, Techmoja has produced work and continued to thrive as a company through several natural disasters. Hurricane Florence being one of the most recent, which displaced thousands of people in our home region and resulted in a host of challenges for our company. From this experience, we have created both internal and external practices to allow our work to thrive from a place of resilience. I would say a central goal is connecting the work to vulnerable and often underserved communities.
Yeah.
COVID-19 challenges us to think about what audience and community engagement will look like in the future. We can imagine in a post-COVID world creating community engagements that collaborate with participants in spaces that are safe for them. Simply put, we will once again meet people where they are. That's been my saying lately. Meet people where they are.
I like it.
It's just so much. It makes the experience so much more rich when you just meet people where they are and stop trying to get them where you want them to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we working with presenters and community members and other stakeholders, we will work from a framework of racial and health equity.
Yeah.
That focuses on making the work for the most vulnerable. So as far as COVID-19, I feel like we've been in COVID conditions even prior to COVID-19 down here.
I feel you. No, that makes sense. And I guess just to follow up with that, just thinking about, has there been anything different in terms of preparation that you've had to adjust to as far as like practices or anything, or landing any projects, or have you seen a change just in the Southeast area in general in the arts?
I would say that all the arts have been halted for the most part. I have seen people trying to do outside performances, and I hesitated on that in the beginning because our population and our demographic are some of the most vulnerable.
Yeah.
And so I didn't want to put people at risk,
right,
of getting COVID-19. But I would say that as far as any changes for me, it made me realize just how vulnerable we are. And it's pushed me to try to seek more funding and fundraise and try to make sure that when we get out of this, that, we can still exist.
Yeah.
And still make sure that we are getting out or amplifying the authentic stories of people of color.
Yeah. Now, it's good that you said fundraise and thinking about that. So living in that vein right now, I know that you received some good news surrounding a piece that you have, Quiet As Is Kept, and received a grant or some funding to help this piece out. But could you talk a little bit about that and give us a little insight to this piece?
Wow. Quiet As It's Kept. It is an evening length dance work that will explore the intersection of sexual trauma, Southern culture, and silence in the Black community through the lens of Southern Blackness, obviously. It's going to use puppetry, shadow puppetry. We're going to have an original score composed.
Wow.
And what I did was I interviewed several people about their experiences, and I promised to keep them anonymous.
Yeah.
But I took some of those stories and I'm going to, through movement, tell those stories, and I'm going to break them into vignettes. So then that way you really get a good grasp and a good scope of the different experiences of sexual trauma that have taken place. And they range from intergenerational to close friends, to family, to simple touch.
Wow. I mean, that sounds powerful already. I just love that title because, especially in the South, too, you know how people keep things quiet.
Yes, and it comes from the Southern vernacular, because you've had those aunties or those grandmas or that mother that's like, well, quiet as it's kept, and you know something's gonna follow that. What do they call it? The tea. The tea is gonna follow that.
I definitely look forward to that. There's also been some other news that I read recently surrounding the Black Seed Project. That gave you some funding along with some other Black arts groups that it was seeking to fund, or other dance and theater groups. And y'all were on the list. Congratulations on that, first of all. But why is it important to keep Black arts going specifically in North Carolina? And how can we continue to support?
Well, coastal North Carolina is a rural region where Black families have lived for generations. As I said before, working in farming and fishing and tourism industries. And Techmoja's vision is to create an indigenous body of theater and modern dance work, rooted in the traditions and reflective of the lives of Southeastern North Carolina people. We believe in the power of collaboration across disciplines and mediums and works to amplify submerged stories. Our ensemble produces both original and classic works that speak to Black experience. Each year, thousands of Black coastal residents get to attend our productions, and that's huge.
Yeah.
And so I was telling someone the other day, I didn't realize the importance of, it actually took COVID-19 for me to realize the importance of having this outlet for people of color. I was in the grocery store begrudgingly. I did not want to go to the grocery store, but I was in the grocery store, and this woman walks up to me, and of course we're both masked.
Yeah.
And she says, "When's the next thing you're going to do?" And I said, "I'm sorry." And it's this older lady. She tells me she's on a fixed income, and she says, "I've been holding my $25 and I'm going to spend that $25 on your next ticket. Wow. So you tell me what the next thing is you're doing and I will be there." And that to me said everything that I needed to hear. It let me know that this was something that people could take pride in and something that people looked forward to, and it was very much needed.
Absolutely. Wow, what a powerful story that is. Wow. Wow. So, last question I have for you. I really enjoyed this interview. But how can people stay in touch with you or with the company, with Techmoja, and just know what's going on, and so they know when things are dropping next?
Yes, so we have several ways you can stay in contact with us. We have our Twitter account, which is at Techmoja, Techmoja. We also have our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Techmoja Purple. Purple because we did a production of The Color Purple.
Oh,
and
okay.
that when the page actually was created. And so I wanted to put that there to remember. And we have Instagram at Techmoja Company. And we have a website, www.techmoja.org. So you got many ways to keep in contact. And I also have an artist page that's coming, and that'll be Kevin Levi Green.
Awesome. Kevin, thank you so much. This has been a pleasure, and I cannot wait to see Quiet as It's Kept and so much more coming from you and your company. I really respect everything that you're doing and what you're doing for the community there in North Carolina, which is a special place in my heart. And I just say, brother, just keep on doing it.